Myth number 6 would be that there is one diet to rule them all, and in the darkness bind them. Lord of the Rings reference. No. But yeah, you referenced it the other day in the podcast that you did with your man, James.
James Jobber.
There we go. Yeah. And
well, he referenced you, I think.
He did, yes. Yeah. But he also referenced Asker's post that, it's all these different types of diets, and you guys put it up really nicely, but they all work from a calorie deficit, and that's the ultimate be all and end all of achieving fat loss, which is very true. If we look at it in that light.
I have in a previous life, and it's one of the things that we've always had great conversations about, is I historically used to have a massive interest in nutrition. I was going to drop out of working in my job once upon a time, and I was going to go back to university, and I was going to study to be a dietitian, and I didn't end up doing it. But I have this huge passion for nutrition, and something that I've always found so frustrating is exactly this, is that you'll come across someone, usually on social media, not always, and they'll be like, you have to be keto. It has changed my life. I'm basically Superman now. It's like, well, that might work for you, but that doesn't mean that it's appropriate for everyone.
Yeah.
And the thing that has always infuriated me more than anything about social media, and for whatever reason, it's usually targeted at women, but not always. It will be the idea of, do these 3 exercises to lose your arm fat.
Oh, yeah.
Or do these 3 exercises to drop
lose that
fat
belly
on your
fat.
belly.
Yeah.
And that isn't a thing. It doesn't work like that.
Not at all. You can't spot reduce.
So you're saying you can't target one specific area?
Well, yeah. Ultimately, it's not possible to diet or exercise in a way that loses fat in any particular method. Everyone's bodies lose fat in different ways and in different places. For me, the leanest I've ever been, I still had belly fat. I still had a bit of fat, and it was really frustrating because I wanted to be outrageously skinny. Glad that I no longer want to be that anymore because it was horrible. But my point is, for me, that is always there. There's nothing I can do about that. For other people, they have absolutely no belly fat, but they have like big legs or whatever, It's just everyone's different. That's just something that happens. And my experience and knowledge suggests that it doesn't matter what diet you're on. Go with whatever works for you, because the only way you'll lose weight is if you are in a calorie deficit.
Yeah, we were talking about this yesterday as well, and we were talking about, there is no one diet that's going to make you lose weight over any other, and that's fine. So you can kind of just choose one, and if it works for you, fine. I guess the place that this becomes problematic is stuff like Instagram diet advice.
Yeah.
So, for example, you were talking about Instagram, whether they're dietitians or whether they're just fit people that have a following and they talk about what they eat. And a lot of it tends to be bordering on disordered eating, but they've 100%. Lost weight, and therefore their diet is the messiah or whatever.
Yeah, I think the best diet overall, whether it's actually for fat loss or not in general, is that it's the diet that is the most sustainable one for you, right? The one that you can consistently do every day, every week, and enjoy. That is the most realistic diet that you can do. And if that does end up being keto, great, go enjoy yourself. But I'll have my cake and I will eat it as well. And,
excellent delivery, I like that.
but like, it helps a lot of people. There is great research for keto and epilepsy and things like this, right? But I think it can also be a great way for disordered eating to create barriers to very easily say, I'm not going to eat that food.
Yep.
And now if I say, I'm vegan or I'm keto, it's more accepted to say that. And then suddenly you don't have to eat all these other foods.
Yep.
And that can be one journey that someone goes down. And I think it's also a case of, we were talking about Eddie Abui or whatever, who's got I checked it the other day, it's 3.1 million followers now. Looked at it 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's 2 million. And he's just exploding, and it's all horrible, terrible advice. He just goes around shaming every single food that you could possibly think of, but then goes home and has 1 or 2 meals a day, and it's just eggs and bone broth, and suggests that this is the best way to live, which is, absolute trash, really.
As someone that once upon a time pretty much lived on tomato soup with frozen peas... living on a diet that is as restricted as eggs and bone broth is going to be absolutely bloody hideous.
The biggest thing is it's not sustainable. Surely, even it's an unhealthy way to lose weight because you're cutting out so many food groups and nutrients, but also you're not doing that forever. So you're losing the weight and then you're coming off that diet.
Yeah.
Hopefully, because otherwise you're probably going to have health issues. And then you're just going to put it back on because you haven't created a sustainable way to live and eat.
Well, exactly. And it's like the reverse slim fast diet, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not getting shakes anymore, but what I'm going to have instead is just meat. But then like you're doing it because you want to lose weight, and inevitably you'll then stop doing that because you want to have bread or pasta or whatever, or just have a normal life. And you haven't had any education. You haven't learned anything about nutrition and how to manage it around your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise. So then you just go back to the habits you had before and gain that weight back, you know?
One of the, in my opinion, the current fad diet, which I guess I don't want to prime you, but I just have by calling it a fad diet. What is your opinion on intermittent fasting?
Well, it's not a diet overall. It's a protocol of how you eat, because it's not actually dictating the food that you have, but how you're having it. But ultimately, I mean, for how many years did we just hear about like, oh, don't skip breakfast, or it's ultimately just people skipping breakfast. That's what intermittent fasting is, isn't it? Yeah. They're having lunch and then they're having dinner.
Well, there seems to be two approaches. There's the one where people eat for a small window in a day.
Yeah.
And there's the other one where people just fast for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And then eat normal for 4 or whatever it is.
It's the idea, I mean, there's certain principles about it, which is as to why it's come around. One is that it helps with inflammation and something called autophagy and cell detoxification, but it doesn't do that any more than if you just did a calorie deficit.
Oh, so wow, okay.
It's kind of pointless. There's then also research to show that by skipping breakfast and doing intermittent fasting, that the meals that you have later in the day are actually bigger and you eat more because you're more hungry. Mm-hmm. So then you don't create a calorie deficit anyway, unless you're then tracking your food and actually monitoring how much you're having.
I think the interesting thing with a lot of the fad diets that have come through and will always come through, it seems like there is some form of scientific studies that correctly identify certain diets or protocols as healthy for a particular niche thing. Like some of these diets are good. Like you mentioned, was it keto is really good for in some scenarios is almost a prescription for people with epilepsy.
Yeah. And type 2 diabetes as well. I mean,
and a lot of the time these diets are grounded in some kind of science for a purpose. For example, I've got psoriasis, and I remember many, many years ago, there was loads of studies about acidic foods having an impact on psoriasis.
Yeah.
And I dabbled and played around with it, and I did find that to be true for me. So like there are
red meat and eggs can be one.
Yeah. So there's quite often science that does back these diets, but then it seems that then it gets latched on into the world of social media marketing. Like Atkins is a great example of it. I'm sure there are examples or scientific examples where an Atkins diet, which is a really high fat diet, low carb, is that right?
Yeah, and high meat. Yeah.
I'm sure there are cases where that has been proven to be useful in some scenarios, but it isn't necessarily good for everyone and for health in general.
Yeah, for sure. It's like kind of been, I was saying that yesterday, I think it's been rebranded as the carnivore diet or whatever now, really, hasn't it? Because it's the same philosophies of just eating lots of meat, not having carbohydrates and just focusing around that. I think any diet that focuses on excluding food groups then also gives poor relationships with food, because now you're denying yourself things. And it's like any old thing, you're at school and you're told not to laugh, and it becomes suddenly really hard not to laugh.
Yeah.
Like it's like that with food. If someone tells you you can't have this food anymore, you suddenly start to crave that food. Oh, I really want that food. And when you come back to it, it's never, I'll just have that one slice. It's like, I'll fucking have a whole loaf.
I guess part of the problem is to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. Therefore, you do have to not eat something.
Correct. You can just do smaller amounts.
Yeah. Well, like obviously, I understand how to lose weight in that method. So arguably, it is still excluding, but it's excluding everything to an extent. But I guess the point of this is that to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit, but that doesn't mean you can't have a little bit of cake if it's appropriate for where you are in that day.
I think the problem is, and I think the reason that these fad diets get traction is losing weight's incredibly hard. We're talking about losing weight here. I'm not really a massive advocate for, just talking about losing weight, but the problem is that this information exists whether we like it or not. So having Will here, who is a qualified nutritionist and has a very level head when it comes to these things, I think it's a good thing to ask questions about how to do it healthily, physically and healthily mentally.
Yeah, I think that some of the biggest things is obviously it is sensationalist. It is, like this Eddie guy or whatever. It's like it's easy for those things to blow up because it's so crazy. It's so off, out of the box kind of thing.
Extreme, isn't it?
Exactly, extreme. And it's also easy to fall into something like that because if you're told not to have something, it becomes quite easy to follow it in a sense because you're just saying, I'm not having it anymore. Yeah. Which is like, I'm going to go on a no sugar diet or whatever it is. Whereas it's harder to just generally reduce everything.
Yes.
And this is why, pretty much, I would say actually every client that comes and works with myself and my team of nutritionists is that it is founded in wanting knowledge. Everybody just wants to know how to eat in relation to the activity and the lives that they lead. And that's the biggest thing with these diets as well. And especially within, I guess, the scene that we're talking in, mainly cycling or endurance sport, is that all these diets work in a general way for whether it's fat loss or not. But then to add in extra facets of actually, I also want to ride my bike 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hours a week and still perform and not lose power and not lose mainly power, I guess, on the bike is a challenge and not feel rubbish whilst doing it. Like you still want to get on the bike and enjoy riding your bike, not feel like you're empty every single time you do it.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes I've made in the past where I have attempted to lose some weight is I've looked at exercise as the source of that loss of weight. Yeah. And then I ended up under eating whilst riding, having horrible times on the bike. Yeah. And then it really puts you off, or just running or whatever exercise. Yeah. And then it would put me off wanting to do it. Whereas I think probably how I would approach it now is you get my deficits on non-activity days. Yeah. So that when I am exercising, I'm fueling that exercise. I'm having a good time on the bike. I'm enjoying myself. I'm wanting to be out on the bike because I get to have a few sweeties.
Exactly. Yeah, there's many ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Do you still work with regular clients, Will?
I do still work with regular clients, yeah.
If people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
They can head down to my website, which is willgirling.com. Really simple. There's an inquiry link there. You can just press on that and then just reach out to us. And I'll have a chat with you, sit down, we'll talk through it all and see how we can help you, really. And
if you're looking for free advice, I would recommend going to Will's YouTube channel because you did put out some videos at some point. You've also done stuff in the past with Francis.
So. Yes, there's a bunch on Francis's page that you can find. I think if you just type in nutrition to his channel, you can find a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But I did a whole series of different ones about riding, whether it's on your turbo, Zwift racing, carb loading for your event, how to do a calorie deficit, a whole bunch. Yeah. And I haven't updated it because the science is still the same at the moment. So